Welcome to another week of Experience Andy Wines Live. This week, we're going to be talking about how work is the reward. And first, we're going to kick off with gratitude. We always focus with gratitude because the more grateful I am, the more often I look for gratitude, the more I find it, the simpler it is to find. And this week, my gratefulness is for the 9%. In life, there are three types of people. 90% of people are consumers. They take in the information, they do with it as they may. 9% of people are contributors, 1% of people are creators. And here in this environment that we've created together, I get to be the creator. I get to have my voice heard week in and week out. Whether you're listening live, you listen or watch YouTube later, or you read the blog, I get to be the creator in this little ecosystem we've built. And then there's the 90% of people that are consumers, people that take in the data, they take in the information. And also in between there's those 9% of people that are contributors. They contribute to the conversation. And when people email me or send me a text message, they see me out networking, they say, hey, I heard you said this thing or you did that, and this is what resonated with me. This is how it's changed my life. Those people are the people I'm most grateful for this week. Earlier today, I got a message from a gentleman saying, Andy, I love your content. I watch all your stuff. However, you talk really fast. I've also gotten feedback in the past that I swear too much. Right? And so when people tell me I swear too much or I'm talking too fast, it gives me the opportunity to say, wow, people are listening. They're paying attention. They value what I have to give this world. And they're giving me feedback. They're making the target very small for me to better relate to that audience member. And so sometimes if it's a little less swearing or it's speaking a little slower so that more people can digest it, absolutely, let's do it. Let's have that conversation. I also appreciate the people that tell me I'm dead wrong and they can't stand the sound of my voice. And they want nothing to do with what I have to say, because it reminds me of who does want to hear what we have to put out here in this program. So all those people are contributors, right? There's no such thing as good news or bad news, only new information and what I do with it. And so for all the people that have their voice heard and want to have their voice heard, I am grateful for you because you do have an impact in this world. And it reminds me and keeps me in focus and more over why I do what I do, because education to me is important. And so the fact that I can share what I've learned along the way and people want to contribute to that conversation, those people I am grateful for. And this week, well, as always, we're going to also pay the bills in some way, shape, or form. Right now, I'm rebranding a little bit my keynotes. Historically, I've done this Language of Leaders keynote, and I'm rebranding that. The messaging is going to be the same. We are packaging it a little bit differently. So I'm packaging it with a new metaphoric umbrella. And so the metaphoric umbrella that I'm rolling out all my keynotes under is Foxhole Conversations or Foxhole Leadership, something along those lines, wherein I will join you where you're at. That's the whole thing. What I talk about is not philosophical. It's not this big ideal where we can debate it. No, it's down and dirty. Where are you challenged and what can I do to support you? What can we do to change one word in one sentence that changes the paragraph, which changes the narrative, which changes the story? The way I find out about those one words is by joining you where you're at in the foxhole. So I will join you in your foxhole, whatever situation you're in, so that we can come together. I can support you. I can mentor you to get you where you want to go. I'm also looking for the right word, whether it's mentor, consultant, coach, leader. I want to hear from you, the contributors. What is it that I do? How is it that I approach the situation? How do you feel? I'd love to know those things as I start to develop this thought leadership, as I roll out this new speaking package going into next year. I really want to know what, from the audience perspective, really resonates with you. How do you feel? Where do you see me positioning myself? So that's my ask is, as I roll this out, I want to hear more from you so that I can impact more people overall. All right, now let's talk about what we're going to talk about this week. Work. An old adage, reward only comes before work in the dictionary. And those two words are very synonymous with people. Often I find myself focusing on the results versus the work to put in. And this last week, I reread the book Traction, which is Gino Wickman and Traction EOS. It talks about all about the actions and activities, what you can have control over. And we measure that. We measure what you're doing, what you've done versus the results of it. Because as a good visionary, as a good business person, we over time realize these are the actions and activities that will lead to the results we want. And I found myself in my life, when I focus on the future, when I focus on the thing that I want to accomplish, or the thing that I have, I fail to enjoy this moment. I fail to enjoy this present. I also realized, whether it's personally or professionally, when I've chased certain things, when I went out and said I wanted to make this income, I went out, chased, and made that income, and I was miserable along the way. I was miserable with the people I worked with. I was miserable doing the job I did. I was miserable in the structure, the hierarchy of corporate America I was in, because I was so focused on that result. Even in my personal life, I set out at one time in my life and said I wanted to get married and have kids. And so I found a person that fit that thing. And yet the dating, the relationship, the person, the dynamic wasn't as enjoyable because I was so focused on that end result. I was so focused on getting to the mountaintop. I tripped and fumbled along the way, realizing I was relatively miserable climbing that particular mountain. And so I thought about that this last week as I was coaching and consulting with the folks from Chuck It Removal Services. Last week, I gave a moment of gratitude. I thanked them for coming in because I realized in my idea, I say, in junk removal, I often say I want to be an advocate for the industry. I want to show the professional side of the industry. I want to talk about responsibility and environmental responsibility and the responsibility we have here in junk removal. And so I think about those things and I think, okay, I get awards every now and then, I get recognition. And the awards and the recognition are not nearly as exciting as taking the time to put the work in. It's not nearly as exciting as the last 3 days last week. I get to sit down with a company that's been in business 17 years, sit down with their entire strategic leadership team, dissect everything they've done up until this point, figure out who they are as a company, figure out their values, figure out where they want to take the company, figure out what 5 years from now looks like, and then figure out the financials, figure out the operations, figure out what needs to change within the company to get there. So I now had this opportunity to spend those 3 days in the trenches. And it was family dynamics, so there was some emotional aspect, there was some past things, there was a future focus. It was a dynamic 3 days. Everyone was exhausted by the end of the day on Wednesday, and yet I was fulfilled. That work was ultimately what I enjoyed the most. Now, someday they're going to go grow this amazing company and they're going to have an exit at some point and they're going to be able to retire and live the life they want to live, the owners. And the new owners, the next generation, are going to be able to grow and scale a company that they want to grow and scale. And at no point am I going to be part of that. I'm not going to be part of those results. Note that I'm not part of the day-to-day grind that they're in today and achieving all the things that they've now achieved in only a few days since we left off from the annual training. And so because I was tied to the work put in and not the results of the work, I have satisfaction. I have satisfaction that we did a job well done. And I'm not focused on my career as a consultant or as a fractional CFO. I was focused in that moment making a difference. There's the old adage about the man that plants the tree, right? Grateful is the man that plants the tree that will never climb the branches, bask in the shade, or eat the fruit from the shade, or eat the fruit from the tree. Because it is in the planting that he finds his reward. So I remember hearing that. My brother Tyler told me that one years ago, maybe my father. I fail to recall at this point. And that's what it's all about. It's about putting the work in. And what I realize with a lot of people, I think about this of the employed folks, right? So many people, they work for their 2 weeks of vacation a year. They work for their pension that they may or may not ever see, right? They work so they can retire someday, and all the while they're miserable. Growing up, I saw people in their careers and say, oh, you gotta hate work. That's why they pay you. No, that's bullshit. Work is a beautiful thing. I talk about that in my book, right? Your career, your craft, it takes work. Relationships take work. Hobbies take work. It all takes work. It takes work to get better at something. This past week, I was deer hunting. That's one of my favorite times of year. It takes work to go deer hunting. I put the stands up. I wake up early. I get out to the field. I drive deer. I push deer. I make sure I have all my gear and equipment. I spend money, right, and go to the store to buy the gear and have all this work, right, for that one moment. I get to take a deer and then bring and haul out of the woods. Then I got the deer and I got to skin the deer and I got to butcher the deer, right? I get to do all those things, right? And then I get to enjoy that meal. Last week I broke bread with the folks from Chuck It. We had venison tenderloin, and it was delicious. And I enjoyed every single moment of that journey. From buying my hunting license all the way to serving food within my house, every step along the way was work. And I enjoyed every moment of it. And yeah, I've sat up there in my deer stand when it's 15 degrees and the wind's blowing 25 right in your face. So yeah, sometimes it sucks. I embrace the suck because I also realize I chose to do this. I choose to do it. It's not always under ideal circumstances. I choose to say, okay, there's 9 days of a deer hunting season, right? I can skip out the day because it's cold and it's inconvenient, or I can put in the work. And when I put in the work, I become more resilient. I become more apt in other areas of my life. It's no different than this show today. Prime example. Today, for those of us that are listening live, it's earlier than normal. The last couple of weeks, I've had some conflicts. Since I moved the show from Mondays to Tuesdays, I've had some conflicts with schedule from things that were prearranged. And it's okay, I could skip this week, and yet the work I put in is what's enjoyable. And even this weekend, as I thought about what am I going to talk about this week? What resonates with me? Right? What books am I reading? What conversations am I having with people that are going to propel me forward to have this conversation with you today? All that work is rewarding. All that work makes me, or not makes me, all that work, when I do that work, I feel that dopamine drip. I feel satisfied in that moment. I feel great when I solve something in my head because I'm anticipating how it may come out later. There's hundreds of notes and hundreds of ideas I've had that never make it to this show. When I marinate on what I'm going to talk about each week, I'm like, I got these 37 ideas, and I come on here and there's 3 things that I recall in the moment. And all that work was rewarding, because it took those 37 ideas to come here to speak for 15, 20 minutes and give the 3 or 4 ideas that I recall that are worth the audience's attention. And all the while, the work was worth it. I don't focus on the 34 things that didn't make the show today. I was excited to have those conversations with people, excited to watch videos or read books that spark those. I was excited to meditate and think through what is important to me this week. And it's because I had the discipline to do this show week in and week out. I had the discipline to say, I'm going to do this for people and for myself. And with that discipline creates the freedom to say what I want to say, the freedom to have the relationships of people. And when I focus on my life, I think about the work I put in. One of my favorite jokes is it takes a lot of work to not have a job. I've been unemployed for 9 years. I'm extremely unemployable and unmanageable, right? And that's what I love about myself. I'm extremely coachable. That's something that was a change about 5 years ago. I'm extremely coachable. And because I'm extremely coachable, I can choose to not be employable because I put in the work. It takes a lot of work to not have a job. Whenever I meet people that are starting in business, entrepreneurs that start their own small business for the first time, I always remind them that they're unemployable, because people have this notion that unemployed is a negative thing. It's no, you are unemployable. And so what does that mean? That means you can work really hard at your craft, pave your own journey. Last week, I had the opportunity to speak in front of middle schoolers, 7th and 8th graders, career fair. And there was plumbers, and there was an airline pilot, and there was the police officer, all your standard village people, if you will. And then I was the token small business owner. And I was amazed by how many 7th and 8th graders, the question was, how much money can you make, right? That was always the 7th, 8th grade. They're thinking that end state. They're thinking the result, right? And I explained to them that as an entrepreneur, you actually put money in first before you start pulling money out. You put the work in first. I brought up people like Elon Musk and Joe Rogan and different people that I really look up to. I brought up Joe Rogan, for example. I said, yeah, he did his podcast for 5 years before it made $1. And even since then, his podcast, he's never had sponsors on his podcast. Why? Because he put in the work. The whole reason he did was because he enjoyed having conversations with people. He was on an episode with Tom Green on the internet like 15, 17 years ago. Tom Green, remember he was on MTV for 10 minutes? He had this episode with him, and he goes, man, this is like an internet thing. Like we can bypass, the big networks. We can bypass cable. We can just come here and have a conversation and broadcast it to the world. Yeah, basically. And that was the start of his podcast. So he put in the work doing what he loved doing, having conversations with people. So it was his buddies and it was comedians and it was thought leaders, and he just started having conversations. And now he's arguably one of the most influential people in the world. Not because he wanted to be the number one podcaster, not because he wanted to blast across the airwaves and have influence. No, because he wanted to have conversations. And he appreciated that work that he put in, and the results will come. When people chase results only, they start to get distracted by the results. And they fail to embrace the moment. They struggle. I keep saying they like I'm projecting. Me, I've done this. When I've been so focused on this goal, I failed to realize the goal that was right in front of me. I failed to see other courses of action that got me to a life that I really wanted to live. And for you, we're coming up on the end of the year here. Last couple episodes, we've talked about being grateful. We talked about what are you going to do to finish out this year strong. As you start to focus on next year, have your goals. Absolutely, have a goal. I'm all about having the goals, right? Have a goal and have it so flexible that along the way you can enjoy the journey. As you look back at this last year, what are you grateful for? What work did you put in? What work felt like a reward? Do more of that. That's our continue bucket. Let's look at the work you put in that was not a reward. You got two choices there. You either stop doing the work because it's not rewarding, or you start finding the gratitude within that work. What are you grateful for within that work? What is the reward within that work? And when you can't find, or you're unable, or you're unwilling to find the gratitude in the work, get rid of the work. You have that choice. You can live with it, right? You either do something about it or you live with it. Those are your options here in life. So get rid of all the complaining. Get rid of the have to and can't. Last week we talked about depression, right? The two words, I can't and I have to. No, ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing you have to do. Dr. Bill Crawford told us that. At the very beginning of my book, I talk about this. I'll start slowing down as I remember what the gentleman told me in the email. Dr. Bill Crawford tells us this. There's only three things in this world you have to do. You have to be born, you have to die, and in between you have to live. Everything else is a choice. So my challenge to you this week is very simple. Choose to find the gratitude in the things you do, and choose to stop doing the things that do not make you great within you. Ask those questions. Sit at the end of your bed, like Dr. Jordan Peterson says. Sit at the end of your bed. Think about the life you want to live. What does that look like? Reflect back on the things you've done the last week, the last 30 days. What things served you and what things did not serve you within you. The answer of what does and what does not serve. Imagine the life you want to live and what is stopping you from doing it today. What is preventing you? And often it's a mindset. It has nothing to do with the outside world and everything to do with what's inside of you that's preventing you from becoming the person that you want to be. So do that. As always, this week and always, do the fucking thing. Take the time to reflect. Take the time to be grateful. And do the things that make you great. Tell the fucking world. Share your ideals with the world. Impact others in a grateful way. Impact others in a positive, proactive way. Finally, show up. Be that great person. Lean in on those unique abilities that make you great. Do that, ladies and gentlemen, and you will live the life that you want to live. I appreciate you. I am grateful that you want to spend time with me today, and I want to spend time with you. And I'm looking forward to next week when we get to do this all over again. Until then, cheers.